What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Backbench Masterclass. Today, we have with us Mr. Rishi Pardal himself, who will be giving us a corporate masterclass on how to do everything from sales to top level executive management to media management, as Sir was telling us. So, I start off every podcast by asking our guests, were you a backbencher or not?
Not only was I a backbencher, but I also had low attendance. And not only was I a backbencher in college, but even today, when I go and attend a conference or a meeting, I try not to sit in the front.
So, why is that? What do you think started off from school and college?
I think it gives me more control of the room. I understand the dynamics better. And I just feel more comfortable. I can then decide when I want to participate, when I want to contribute, or just stay silent.
Sir, so how did you start your career?
Well, actually, I started my career even before I passed out of college. So, my dad had a business in Bangalore, and I used to help him. So, that was the start. But then from college, I went on to do my master's in the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade. And I was extremely fortunate that my dream company, which was Hindustan Lever, gave me an offer on campus. And then I joined their management training program, and that's how it all began.
So you mentioned that your father had a business. Was it an easy transition, not going down your father's business and joining a corporate company?
Uh, for many years, I thought I will be an entrepreneur and that I will join his business. But then I think life had other plans in store. I won't say I planned my transition to the corporate world. It happened due to a few events. But at the end of the day, I've never regretted it. And now, after 27 years in the corporate world, I'm back to being an entrepreneur. So in some ways, I'm back to Bangalore, back to my roots, and doing what I wanted to do in the first place.
So what business did your father have?
Oh, he had a restaurant business,
Okay.
right? And it was on Brigade Road. So again, in the same area that we are talking about. So I've been born in this house that we are talking in. I've lived around here. College was here. School was here.
So again, you mentioned that your father had a restaurant, and when you joined the corporate world, you were eventually dealing in products that your restaurant consumed. Did you find that the experience you gained at your father's restaurant sort of helped you give you some consumer insights?
not only consumer insights, but also I think a work ethic. See, when you start working and if you believe that that's like a 9 to 5 job, or you're not responsible for outcomes, that doesn't work very well. But when you come from that kind of a background where you've only been outcome driven and you've never looked at the clock, especially because you're coming from the restaurant business, when you work while others party by definition, right? So your working hours are other people's restful hours. So you don't have that concept of 9 to 5 weekends, And I think it started like that. Of course, I now believe very clearly that how you rest is as important as how you work. So I do make it a point that I must get my rest hours, rest days, downtime, time with the family, time for myself, doing things I love. But it was not like that.
So in the corporate world, there's often, we've all seen on LinkedIn, there's like this hustle culture. There's a lot of like health sort of takes like a backseat. And when did this journey of health optimization begin for you?
So as you rightly pointed, 27 years in the corporate world, lots of travel, eating late nights. When I was living in Hong Kong, I had a global job. And so I was doing Hong Kong, United States once a month, maybe for 2 days, doing Hong Kong, Europe very often. So combination of, calls, travel, eating out, irregular time took a toll on my body. And somewhere in October 2022, I actually woke up one day with a lot of pain in my abdomen, rushed to hospital. Somebody said I needed to have surgery, get the sort of organ removed. I refused to do that without due consideration. I searched the whole world for treatments, for a diagnosis, I found really that the medical system is a bit broken. They are extremely reactive to things that happen, and only focus on the area where you have a problem. But fortunately, I found someone who today became my business partner, and that someone cured me by going to the root cause, by looking at me holistically, understanding my genes, my gut, my microbiome, my biochemistry, my eating habits, and really we changed all of that, and I'm hale and hearty. I'm well. So as I recovered, I realized that there is another way, a better way, and that's how the genesis of the company that I now have, which is called Biopeak, and we are going live this month, was formed. And yeah, so we believe there's a better way, a way that's more proactive, a way that's extremely personalized to your needs, a way that can prevent things from happening, and a way that can accelerate your performance. So before this podcast, you were asking me about biohacking. So that's a way of accelerating your performance, right? So whether you're looking at managing symptoms, unresolved issues, or accelerating your performance, that's where my company comes in, and we think we have a better way.
So at what point do you think corporate managers need to start looking at their employees also like athletes and bring in a system of healthy and sustainable performance?
I know a lot has been written about this, a lot is said about this, there's a lot of noise. But if you really look at my experience, you always look at your people in a very strategic way. And I have always believed that by telling my story and insisting that people rest, putting in rules in place. So I was telling you about my global job in Hong Kong. Now, one of the rules we put in place was that Friday night Hong Kong time and Monday morning, Hong Kong time, which is Sunday evening in the United States, there can be no global calls. So giving that time back to people to have time with their family. No work to be done unless it's an emergency, in which case you can't help it, but that's rare, on the weekends. Now to the extent that we could, we said, okay, let's try and timestamp emails and send it out at a time when it's working hours. Now it didn't always succeed because I had a global team, so when it was time for me to work, it was time for somebody else to sleep. But the reality was you create certain rules, right? And I think that not only that it improves the health of the employees, but it actually accelerates the performance of the company. I clearly believe it. You can't get the best out of overworked, tired people just because you think that they are on the clock. That time out is important. Now you have leave in corporates, right? And many people, especially in India, view that as a source of money. So they try to accumulate it and then at some stage cash out with it, right? So there are some rules. And now I understand that it's important money, but what is equally important is to take that time off. Now nobody does that better, I have seen, than the Europeans. Summertime in Europe, it's almost like offices are deserted. Christmas time across the world, it's almost like reset time for all corporates. So it's tougher in India given that we are diverse and we have different festivals and so on and so forth. But I really think that that's another step. And then the last one is really, accelerating the physical, mental, emotional well-being of your people, because that really pays off. Pays off for the person, pays off for the company, and ultimately drives engagement. So I think it's not in the future. There are plenty of examples today of what I call enlightened employers, making sure that employees are not just, a set of people who are designed to perform tasks, but are a strategic part of the company. And how you manage that is, really.
So building on your point, again, you've like given a great outline of how having like healthy employees, not just like physically but like mentally and all of that, can actually improve the morale and get better productivity results. So now, I mean, in the past few years, I mean, in the past few decades, India's made it like compulsory for companies, to like pay like their employees insurance and a lot of other facilities. Do you think there's going to come a point in time where companies are going to, if not already, where like mainstream companies are going to start, to pay to increase their employees' longevity or like biohack the entire routine?
So first of all, I think my belief, based on my experience, is you have to go to the root cause and not just follow a fad or a trend. I personally believe that good quality companies are already invested in this process, and the trend will only accelerate. Yeah. Uh, I know personally of so many companies who are not just going to the insurer, but are also insisting that people do wellness programs, their senior management goes for retreats. All of this is beginning to accelerate. There will come a time, even in India, where this is becoming important, and employees will make career decisions based on not just the money they get, not just the professional growth journey they'll have, but also the emotional well being that they can aspire to, right, is going to change. And it will come from employees.
Is that something you're trying to position Biopeak to offer to?
It's one of the channels that we will use. So essentially, there are two kinds of people who will come to us, right? The first is someone with an unresolved symptom. So I gave you my example. I had a problem. It was unresolved. Either the medical system's current solution was extremely, sort of out there in terms of a surgery, which would have a debilitating impact on my life. And so there are plenty of people with IBS, diabetes, not serious enough to go to the hospital, or the hospital is very extreme, they come to us, right? The second type of person is already invested in the health, has a wearable, goes for a morning walk, does resistance training, watches their weight, watches their food, um, balanced alcohol, but they are looking for someone to accelerate their performance. They want to, over time, become even better than they are. That's the second kind of person that will come to us. And we have programs designed for both. So what we do is we first do the complete testing, and I mentioned, from the genetics, which is your nature, to your epigenetics, which means how your genes are expressing themselves. So, that part of it, your biochemistry, the way your body is processing all the things you do, so your metabolites. And based on that, we look at where the pathways at your cellular level are blocked, where there could be issues, how things are manifesting, and then we give you a personalized program that covers, again, nutrition, it covers supplements, exercise, mental well-being. And then we not only give you the program, but we have a multidisciplinary team that stays with you over the duration of the program and tries to drive an outcome for you. So that's the difference between the Biopeak program and anything else.
So you've worked in essentially like when you were in the corporate world, you were dealing with a lot of the FMCG sector per se, and now and at the ending you were the CEO and MD of United Breweries, and from that you've moved to health optimization. How was that transition like?
Whether I worked in Unilever or in United Breweries or in between in a labeling company, the focus is always to be true to your purpose. And your purpose is defined not just in terms of your profit and loss account, but the impact you have on the environment, sustainability, the impact you have on stakeholders, including your consumers. So, in an alcohol company, you want to drive responsible consumption, not unbridled consumption. You want to offer the consumer a chance to have a non alcoholic product without going away from the brand promise that people find attractive. When you are in a labeling company, you're trying to drive inventory accuracy. And inventory accuracy in the apparel business that we served is actually designed to reduce overall apparel production, which has got a huge carbon footprint, right? So one way is to look at it is say, I'm helping companies to manage their inventory and reduce their cost, reduce their markdowns. But then the add-on benefit is I am creating an ecosystem where apparel inventory through the supply chain drops, and that leads to a lower carbon footprint. The apparel industry, apparently, I was told, is the second or third largest carbon footprint among all industries. So after oil, it is probably the largest, right? Each packet comes, each garment comes with its own, footprint. And so reducing that. So I think wherever you are, you look for that purpose. And once you find the purpose that is larger than money, that's when you start engaging people. That's when you start really unlocking them.
So would you say your motto for doing business or anything is value creation at the end of the day? Is purely value creation.
That is the purpose of business. The purpose of business is to create value. The definition of value today is broader. It's not just monetary value. It is also value to the society that you live in, value to the consumers, bettering their larger lives. So I think it is value creation and purpose. So that's how I try to look at it. So you try to drive value through a purpose.
So, how would you say that you inculcated this mindset in employees also? Because many times a corporate employee would just see their job as something that creates a salary for themselves, not value overall.
And that's where the purpose comes in. Every human being in the world wants to be associated with something that is larger than themselves. Sure, the monetary part, and I know you guys have just done your commerce, so you must have read about Maslow's need hierarchy. So, the basic needs is there. But at the other end of the spectrum, there's a self-actualization as well. And every person is at a different stage of journey. For some people, they moved beyond their basic needs and they are only operating in that space. Others are there in the social need hierarchy of needs, but nobody has a self-actualization that is zero, at least in my experience. So as a leader, as a leadership team, if we can engage people in this larger purpose, I think it starts developing a flywheel of its own. And when it starts developing a flywheel of its own is really when change happens. Because a corporate leader, let's say you said I was the CEO of a company or I was the global head of business based out of Hong Kong, I don't create the value myself. You deliver through others. And how do those others deliver? They deliver through even more others, right? So typically an organization would have 7 layers. Value doesn't start at the top. True value happens only when successive layers make the company's purpose, strategy their own and execute according to that. That's when the person closest to the wheel understands how to improve the wheel. Right? I can't be in 31 factories at the same time. I can't engage with hundreds and thousands of consumers or customers at the same time. So the people who are actually doing the job, they need to be connected to that. And that's how, this whole thing happens. One person, I don't think can deliver much. And I don't think there are organizations that can live with the level of productivity of a single person. That's why you have teams, that's why you have senior leadership, and that's how you keep, enlarging the base of that pyramid, which is the.
So can you tell us a bit about the roles you perform at Biopeak?
So in every entrepreneurial journey, there has to be an innovator. So my business partner is the innovator. We have another business partner who's the mentor, very senior gentleman who's also extremely passionate about this space. So I play the role of the entrepreneur. My job is to take the innovation and make it understandable and compelling to consumers, build the organization, build the culture, build the capability around the product, and then make sure that we pilot it, we scale it, and we really run the business. So at a high level, I do what any other entrepreneur or a CEO does. Uh, People, investment decisions, strategy, and then the most important, getting things done, the execution.
So you mentioned again, like conveying this entire message and what your company does to consumers. How do you go about marketing this?
We believe that the best marketing for something like Biopeak is through word of mouth. We want consumers to engage, to experience, see the difference, and I sincerely believe that every satisfied or delighted consumer will bring a lot of referrals. So that's the primary mode that we want to do. However, like any enterprise, we have to drive the four levers. So we have to get people's attention, we have to arouse their interest, we have to convert that interest into desire, and finally in action. So from there is a marketing, there is sales, there is activation of different channels. So we're looking at different cohorts with specific needs. For example, somebody who is retired, good living to them, health span to them is different. The kind of interventions that you can do are different. When somebody is 25, the interventions are very different. The kind of positivity and outcomes we can get is much more. So encouraging that cohort to join in early is a marketing task. So I think there are tasks by cohorts. I was a CEO. There are plenty of CEOs out there who go through the same wear and tear, who do the same travel. So understanding how they can travel sustainably, ensuring that they can get over their stress and their jet lag, for example, that becomes a corporate CXO's task. So helping them do that. So different cohorts have different tasks, and we are creating programs for each person that is unique to the cohort, but more importantly, unique to the individual, because no two individuals are.
So you mentioned again unique to the individual, and if you look at like globally, there are a lot of like standards like BMI and all of that. And usually, when you have like a certain criteria, it's always taken based on like American or like European standards. But if you look at like the Indian diet or like the Indian body, like Indian health per se, it's entirely different.
Yes.
So do you think that a company like Biopeak has a greater, let's say, value proposition to offer to like an Indian consumer?
It's part of our core proposition. So again, you hear of today a particular drug in the US, which is supposed to, at a very small dose, drive longevity. Now, this particular drug is actually an immunosuppressant. It is normally given to patients who are doing an organ transplant, and this is given to them to suppress the immune system so that the body doesn't reject that new organ. Now, if you blindly copy this from the West, this could come to India. Now, imagine in the kind of environment that we have, which is tropical, which has a high pathogen count, if you start, however small, suppressing people's immunosystems, what kind of a pandemic you can create. So just bringing your question alive with a very practical example, right? So we have part of our science advisory is with the Indian Institute of Science. So they are working with us to look at these kind of things to see whether, something that is prevalent in the West can actually translate into India or not. Right? Again, you mentioned our diets are very different. In a temperate zone, a high fat, high protein diet can be sustainable. Not so here. And therefore, we just can't, again, copy all these trends that have been designed with Caucasians in mind. So we have to customize for India. We have to customize for the tropics and then customize for the individual. So sometimes we have to go against and take a different point of view to what is prevalent in Western science. Now, we have a rich history of Ayurveda. People have forgotten that. So we have to blend the best of both worlds. And that's where Biopeak, therefore, is agnostic to Western science or Oriental science or traditional Chinese medicine. We say we have no ismology. What we need to do is understand the individual and recommend what is best for them.
So, how long would you say that it even takes you to fully understand an individual before getting into a process?
So there are two or three stages, right? The first stage is entry into our program is based on a detailed questionnaire that people fill. Now, what we are trying to do there, and sometimes it's painful, is to try and understand people like their general physician knew them in the good old days. But today there are no general physicians, right? There are no people who come home, who know your family, who know your family history, and therefore can tell whether something is actually an issue or not, right? So that's the first stage. Then we go through, based on what we need, their genetics, their gut, their microbiomes, their metabolites, their biochemistry. So we are going now, we are supplementing that general physician level of knowledge with science, with details. And potentially we have over 100 GB of data on every individual before we even start making recommendations. But that's not the heart of the program. The heart of the program is once you know, how do you decode that with the help of the science papers there are, medical knowledge there is, augmented with AI, and then give a detailed plan to people based on their data. And then after the plan, you have a multidisciplinary team working with them, trying to effect those changes. And then at a periodicity, which is different for different programs, you also test their top 2 or 3 either goal related concerns or issues that may be manifesting in their body and solve for those. So you look at my own personal journey. I said 22, we are now 25. It's a continuous improvement journey. It's not the mindset, oh, I was ill and now I'm cured. It's a journey, right? And in that journey, you constantly keep improving. You go from I'm fixing an issue to performing well to accelerating performance. So you're going from ill health to healthy to maximizing your health span and hopefully ultimately your longevity.
So in this journey, when you talk about improvement, what are some indicators that you see that are showing you that there is improvement in an individual?
So one of the things that modern science and medical science is now discovering, that being physically active and having a good musculature is not only important for your day-to-day quality of living, but a great indicator of your longevity. And by the way, it has a great impact also on your cognition. Now, when you start making these connections, you can actually physically see. Now, some scientists say that the most potent indicator of longevity is your grip strength. Is it measurable? Yes. Can it improve? Yes. Right? So there are tangible things that you can see. Of course, there are all the test markers and the usual stuff that you can see. But the reality is it's different for every individual. But there are things like this that are practical and doable, demonstrable, and that's what we want to focus on.
So in a country like India, where I think it's very common for we all have family members who either have high blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, and a bunch of other diseases. How relevant do you think something like this is? Like, if you could just like look at the camera and like a 1 minute pitch to them that they should join this program and actually take their health more seriously. Like, how would you go about doing that?
So I think it starts with the understanding that the only wealth that you have in life is your health. Once you lose your health, you have lost everything. The good news is that science has today proven that your genetics, what you're born with, has somewhere between a 17 to 27% impact on your health span and your longevity. Which means that 3/4 of your quality of life and your health is in your hands. Now, if that understanding can be translated into a personalized plan that builds on your needs and changes in your body, I think you can truly unlock this true wealth.
So when you speak about genetics, for people, between their 25s to 35s, potential parents are considering, parenthood. What are certain things that they need to keep in mind to ensure that issues in their genetics don't affect their baby?
Yeah, I think there are certain markers that one can clearly look at. But again, as I said, just because there is a gene does not mean that it's going to express themselves. Sometimes we view genetics as almost like a sentence of your life, which is why I said previously it is now proven, and there are enough studies out there to say that your genes have a 17 to 27% impact on your life. And it is possible to manage what genes are expressing and what are not through active management and health. So sure, one must take advantage of medical science and understand uh, what is there, but we should not view it as a death sentence. Sometimes people don't want to do a genetics test, saying that I don't want to know, because that's almost like I have made up my mind that if it's there in my genetic makeup, it's going to manifest. That's not true. Right? So knowledge can help your medical team, your doctor actually help you to manage those conditions. And if you early knowledge is always good knowledge, right? Early detection of something that's wrong with you is always good thing because you can clinically deal with it. There are very few things that are today cannot be clinically dealt with if you have early knowledge of it. And your body is great, fantastic at hiding disease. You have a problem in one part of your body, some other part of your body is working overtime for you to lead a normal life till it's too late. So best to know early so that you can take action.
So, what's a good age you think that people could get tested for all of this?
There's no age which is early enough. But what I believe is that till the age of 30, one believes that one is immortal, right? So as soon as you realize that you are not immortal, and we know that musculature actually peaks in the late 20s and starts declining after that, it's a great time to reorient yourself. It's very difficult when you're feeling immortal to do anything about it. It's just reality, right? So I think the moment you realize your mortality is the best time to start. But of course, if you start earlier, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, many kids go to the gym, they go and play sport. If you can build a science around it and do, the right balance of activity rather than overemphasize one particular thing. So we had someone who, for example, we could, understand the musculature and the fibers and recommend the right balance between aerobic and strength training. Now, if you know that early, it's great, right? Rather than only play one game 6 days a week, maybe you need to, play badminton, go to the gym, go for a walk, give your body rest, eat well. And that combination, it's never too early. The earlier you start, the better your body will get accustomed to it and respond to it. So, like I said, the body is very good at hiding disease. I can equally tell you the body is a fantastic instrument to respond to positive or negative stimuli that you give it. Right? So, if you give it positive stimuli earlier, the better it is. Right? But certainly when your immortality thought disappears,
So, what do you think are certain negative stimuli that we're all experiencing on a day to day basis, but we either don't pay too much attention to it or we're just unaware of it?
pathogens around you, especially in India, the environment that we are all living in, high urban environment, uh, radiation from mobile towers, potentially lead in your paint, water quality that you're consuming. So I think there are so many things around us, and we can deal with many of these things. But as a society, I think we'll also have to start demanding better governance. The choices we are making as a society today are around, urbanization, around development, but it comes at a cost. Think of what Delhi is going through. Delhi winter used to be the most aspirational time for me to go there. Great weather, the food would come out, the Delhi ke gajar, as they used to say. Today I avoid going to Delhi in the winter because, of the smog. Now that is the price that we are paying collectively, whether you choose to participate or not, in the pollution. Right? So the reality is that there are plenty of stuff that is wrong around us, and we have to correct for that, individually, collectively, and through our governance. It starts with us, by the way. There's a beautiful saying that I keep reading, usually around animal conservation, which says, when the buying stops, the killing will too. Right? There's somebody to buy, and hence there is a kill. So we have to change as individuals first, rather than blame everything around. Our choices need to be, and the good news is, from whatever I've seen in the corporate world, especially in my last 3 stints, young consumers are making choices like that. They are demanding of brands to know what their footprint is, what is in their product, and making a choice accordingly. And when that happens, companies are forced to change because they want to achieve their corporate purpose. And that change is far more sustainable and happens at a faster pace than what any government can drive.
I think that's very true because we all see it on a day-to-day basis. Our generation is a lot more conscious of sugar and of protein. Something that our parents would always tell us, like, it's just a mithai. What's the big deal about it? So that's a really good shift in trend in terms of what we do. The other thing that I feel that our generation has picked up negative trend is the way we're viewing cosmetics and the way we're using them. Have you ever noticed any kind of markers or negative indicators of the cosmetics industry?
So I think your skin is a large organ, it's permeable, stands to reason that if you put too many foreign objects on it, it's going to have an impact. Now, the good news is that there are lots of companies who are actively recognizing this and making sure that they give you products that are not bad for you, right? But it's today expensive. The other thing is, young people are not necessarily the most prosperous people, other than a few people who are inheriting money, etc. And so therefore they don't make some of those choices. And then there's a trend of wanting to look good in a world that's always on. Instagram, And so can you be natural? Can you be off as an individual for yourself? That's where it's going to start from, right? And otherwise, there'll always be a cheaper variant, a more expedient variant that's affordable, that people will invest in and people will buy. So even if there are great companies out there that are making great products, there are equally companies out there that will achieve a price point, right? And that's real. So we need to ourselves make those choices.
So there's a lot of fake. I have a very different question. There is a lot of fake news out there. I mean, and with the rise of social media, it's become very easy for anybody to claim to be an influencer, or you've WhatsApp forwards and all of that. And when it comes to longevity and biohacking, how does one, like a layman, how does one differentiate fact and fiction?
Very difficult. Because most of the fiction out there is so factual and so, it seems so accurate that you want to follow it, right? And this is why I think you need programs that are designed for you. And I'm not talking about Biopeak. There could be any other company that you want to look at. But you have to go and find somebody that is very rigorous with you and works with you. By definition, a hack is a, shortcut, right? And I would be very wary of a hack because every hack creates a unwarranted, unintended, unknown reaction somewhere else, right? So therefore, I think something like Biopeak is a company, but if you look at what Indian Institute of Science is doing, and they have something called Longevity India, which is something that our mentor is furthering. They're trying to get to the roots of geromedicine, longevity, health span. So one has to look at not just a hack, but the whole program and how it's designed for you, right? So, for example, I told you, um, we were able to recommend to somebody um, that they needed to run less and do a combination of running and resistance training. But there are plenty of runners out there who only want to run. And there are plenty of people out there who only want to do resistance training, right? Now, it may not work. And just because it worked for somebody else does not mean it will work for you. Because you are a unique individual. You have your own um, genetic expressions. You have your own mental makeup, your own stress levels. And therefore, just following a herd will not sort of work for you. This is why I think it's very important, whoever you use, you have to ask questions. You have to almost iterate a bit. Now, for example, in my own personal case, and since I'm not violating any data privacy, I can say it. When we started with my supplementation program, it wasn't working. All kinds of supplements were not working till they discovered that I'm carrying actually a huge pathogen load. I had candida. I had to clean out the candida, right? So, so there is, for example, you're chasing this new thing. I mean, and it happens in phases, right? Olive oil once, or protein now, you said that once, or whatever else it is. You have to first see, what it works for you or not, and then find a source that is actually, healthy, not just adulterated.
So in a country like India, especially for programs like these, I wouldn't be surprised because the way people think, they would be quite apprehensive, right? So what do you think, or how do you think you remove that apprehensiveness from them?
I have a follow up to that. Is this space regulated? Like, is there like government regulation on this? Because it's a new industry.
So what's happening across, well, answering your question first, what's happening across the world? So longevity clinics, health span clinics are coming across. There are now standards that are being put in place globally. But you cannot call yourself this type of service if you don't have the following infrastructure, the following type of medical staff on your rolls, the following capabilities, if you're not doing these tests. So those are self-regulations that are coming, and I encourage that because I believe that once everybody follows certain standards, then you, at least as a consumer, know that that's a standard that you do. And it's a matter of time before governments will also start regulating. And I think it will usually start in the West. It will come to India, and again, to be welcomed. Because any responsible player will always welcome regulation and standards because you not only want to meet those, you actually want to exceed them, right? That's why if you see a lot of programs of sustainability, of diversity, inclusion in companies, especially responsible large companies, exceed the regulation of a particular country. Because it's not good enough to comply with an average law. It is better to actually be the leading edge of the change you want to see. And a company like Biopeak would always want to go to that leading edge. By the way, which is very true as an employee as well, and as a young person, you have to find something in which you are the leading edge. And that is the value that you bring to the party.
So, do you think having a benchmark in this, like if the government or let's say like there is a benchmark set for like the Indian for like the Indian subcontinent when it comes to longevity and all of that. Do you think having something like that is going to accelerate not just like companies like yours trying to exceed that benchmark, but also consumers having a lot more faith and trust because there is some kind of standard?
100%. And look, I think that whatever we are doing today, I am convinced, irrespective of whether we succeed or not as a company, and I know we will, I think this is the way medicine will evolve to in the future. Mankind is at a stage where medical science itself, regenerative medicine, wearables, I'm wearing a wearable, artificial intelligence are all converging together. It would be a pity if we did not use this convergence to redefine how medicine is done. Right? Keeping your population well has to be a priority. Today, treating sick people is a priority, right? And it's a logical priority. It should be a priority. But keeping them well, prevention better than cure. And therefore, I think that's the direction we are all going to. It's a matter of time before insurance companies start saying that, hey, if you have all these markers, maybe I'll give you a price off on your premium. Maybe I'll give you better coverage. So you see the flywheel. So I think that the industry is going to a point where at some stage it will be the way of the future. May happen in 10 years, may happen in 20 years, but it will be a pity if we don't harness all this knowledge that humankind, all of us, have. Right? Today there are 3,300, I was told, research papers that get published every day. How feasible do you think it is for a single human being, who we call a doctor, to keep pace with that? How feasible do you think it is? Right? Now, think of AI and how that can be used to harness the power of that knowledge and then apply it with that 100 GB of data that you have as an individual and apply that there.
So, building on what you said about doctors and about this intersection that we have amongst all these fields, where do you think the interaction will be with the medicine industry and your industry? In the sense that sometimes, like how you said, like in your own case, the medicine industry did not have the most positive impact on what you thought of it, right? So, how do you feel like you would take that?
See, there's nothing to take on. Today, business models are compensated in particular ways. Right? A hospital's business model is different, a pharma company's business model is different. As things like this become more prevalent, as services like Biopeak become more prevalent, I feel there'll be a convergence, there'll be a reordering of that business model. Today, they get money, for example, by selling a drug. Tomorrow, it could be a subscription model to an individual's sort of plethora of needs. Just different. So I don't see it as a us versus them. I see it as a convergence that will happen. And there'll be some heat and noise before. That's reality. But that convergence will happen. It's happened across so many different industries, right? If you go back 150 years, if somebody had said, there will be these machines on the car that you can summon at will, and they'll transport you from place A to place B, it would be science fiction. You would imagine a H.G. Wells writing about it. But today, it's reality. If you go to San Francisco, and I was shocked last year, you have this Waymo coming at you, which is a driverless car. Now, today it operates in a very small zone. But the reality is that's the future. And that's, more than anything else, that will solve safety and traffic issues. Because now you don't need your own asset. You call one at will. It comes, it transports you, and you leave it. So it's never in the garage. It's only on the road. So what looks like science fiction today becomes reality eventually. And so that's what I think will happen.
So I think that's pretty important for your industry, right? Because many times you might receive a customer that has his, prescription, has gone through the entire medical process. And there's a solid chance that after your data process, you might not agree with their diagnosis, right? So how do you feel that convergence helps in that process?
It does, right? Because you start using a combination of data, insights to talk to the individual, and then you can't change everything in a day. So you prioritize what's the most important thing. And eventually, the person, all of us as human beings, we only don't rely on clinical data, we also rely on how we feel. So if I've done something for somebody, for example, when they asked me to clean out some of the pathogens in my body, or they made adjustments to my gut, I felt good, right? And when I felt good, I said, okay, I want to continue this. I want more of this. So it starts there. That's why I said the people who come to us either will have an unresolved symptom. Note the word unresolved. So I have a prescription, but not solving my problem, right? And that is where I think the need gap comes. So and it's constant, right? There'll be a dialogue. And usually, if we say something, the person is going to go back to their doctor and say, hey, I also learned this. And the doctor will say, okay, try or don't try. You know, that process also happens. And we encourage that. Because ultimately a doctor does a great job, right? And we also have doctors. So I'm nothing against the profession. I think it's just now evolving to the next stage of something that is eventually.
So speaking about unresolved symptoms, what are certain things that all of us might experience? It could be like headaches, it could be slight loss of sleep or anything that we don't realize is an indicator of something that's hidden in our body, like you said. So
Number one. See, I think one of the things that we have, everything that we experience is telling us something. As I said, the body is very good at hiding disease, but it gives you some signals, right? Sleep, which we often ignore. I once read that there is a founder of a subscription service who said that, we are competing against sleep, and the good news is we are winning. Right? Now, the sleep is your most important activity. It's when your body rejuvenates, corrects, rests. There are some processes that can only happen in the dark when you sleep. If we give up that, that's a problem. And today we are, right? Late night, early start, and in between Netflix. And then what we've done is we've got these brilliant lights in our room, which never go off, because even if you've switched off the main light, you have a blue light emitting device somewhere. You probably have your phone next to your head when you're sleeping, right? When you wake up in the middle of the night, you probably want to see that. So we are doing a number of things, consciously and unconsciously, to vitiate a very critical process. The human body is designed to move, but we are doing a number of things to become more sedentary, right? And then we think that if we exercise for 30 minutes in a day is great, that's enough, right? But the body is designed for constant movement. And now science is saying that other than the conscious slot of exercise that you do, keeping yourself moving every day. So when they did these research uh, among the blue zones, where people live the longest, they found that one of the things that was common to those people or those zones was that those people had been accustomed to throughout the day either gently walking from place to place or cycling or some activity that kept them moving every day all the time. That's missing in our modern society, right? You go for a meeting, I've done my exercise, I go in for a meeting, I'm there for about 12 hours or 10 hours or 8 hours or whatever the number of hours the meeting has. And by the way, how is that meeting organized? We're all sitting, right? Sitting all the time. Our bodies are not designed for that. And somewhere I read, sitting is the new smoking. It's probably true. So I think we have to get out of it. So some of those simple things, right? But I would say exercise, sleep. These are the two things that are not things.
So speaking of that, again, the things that people are doing wrong. On the other end, you have people who are going on an absolute extreme. If you look at on social media, you have people like Brian Johnson. You have people like, have you heard of Ashton Hall?
Yes.
Yeah. What is your opinion on waking up at 4 a.m. and dunking your face in ice water?
I have no opinion really. These are all extremists. They are very good to establish the need. I'm not sure the habit is the most effective. Making your body uncomfortably comfortable or comfortably uncomfortable, that should be your aim. So there is a zone when you are exercising, you're breaking down your muscle. But if you continuously do that, something that I was guilty of, you're not allowing the body to not just recover, but the strength to build. Because when you exercise, you are actually not building muscle then. You're breaking down muscle. So if you don't allow your body to rest after that, you're not allowing the body to build the muscle. You're in a constant state of heightened muscle pain, which is why sometimes I see a lot of people who say, I am always stiff because I'm always exercising. My body is always stiff. And you touch them, they say, oh, don't touch me here. It's really hurting because I did a workout. When did you recover? That's the question to ask, right?
Yes.
So I think keeping your body in that zone where you are a bit uncomfortable, but not overdoing it. That's the place to be. So that's why today in modern science, they say zone 2 training. This balanced activity, which we have lost sight of because it's not cool to say I'm balanced. It's cool to say I ran 100 kilometers. I'm just throwing it out, right? I'm an ultra marathoner. It's fine for some people who train their bodies for that for an extended period, but they also rest after that, right? Every marathon runner takes a break after a marathon, right? So they're doing a specific activity and they're resting after that. Now the question is that, for a lay person or an average person who's not going to run a marathon, what do they do, right? And so that's where I think this balance of activity, somewhere you're testing your strength, somewhere you're stretching, somewhere it's stamina, somewhere it is, all of that combination works, right? Right nutrition, timing.
So do you listen to Huberman? Do you listen to the Huberman Lab?
So I listen to a lot of people, um, not necessarily follow them, but whatever I listen to, I try to use our resources to either validate or not validate, right? And then I'm a great believer in using multiple data points. So I don't believe that anybody has the gospel truth, including myself. So what I feel is there are different data points. There are sometimes contrasting data points, and you have to take that and synthesize it. So just listening to, this particular person or that particular person will not take you anywhere because we've seen that, right? We've seen people who have been world authorities on something say something only to be debunked after a year or after 2 years or after 5 years. So I think understanding that multiplicity of data points, synthesizing it, and then seeing whether it works on the individual in concern, that is important.
So what top like if you could just give us a list of three people that we could listen to and again not follow but just listen to like three good people who could like in like the longevity space who give out genuine advice.
I'm very loath to take names exactly for the reason.
Okay.
But there are enough.
Okay.
There are enough out there. What I'll tell you instead, I'm not trying to avoid the question. What I'll tell you instead is look for people who are having opposing points of view, right? Who are slightly different. That will give you a sense of the breadth of opinions out there, right? If you only listen to one type of opinion, you're going to get an echo chamber. There is no piece of, in my learning, I can with sufficient rigor find any data to prove any point or disprove it, right? This is just reality. It's what I look for. So therefore, it's important to have that diversity of opinion so you can make up your mind, test it on yourself, test a few things, and I'm not saying go to the extremes, balance, in the middle, try it out, and you will find your own answers. See, not everybody is going to spend 2.5 hours a day listening to podcasts that talk to them about a particular point of view on longevity. The danger today is your digital feeds have algorithms in them to give you what you want. And so, if you are not careful and if you don't actively inculcate diverse points of view, you're going to be in an echo chamber and you will be so divorced from reality that you just don't know, right? I mean, great example was how, the algorithms of a particular social media company were used or misused in elections in the United States, right? You become echo chambers. And I've run an experiment on myself on some of these, right? So I say this week, I only want to listen to this particular point of view on this country. Within like 4 hours, all my feeds are starting to reflect that, right? Within 4 days, I don't even know that there's another point of view that exists. But I'm running this as a conscious experiment. So then I say, now I want the exact opposite point of view. And within 4 hours, my feeds are reflecting that, right? So if you can run that experiment on yourself, and you don't have to believe me, you run it and see, then you know that, what you cultivate is very, very important today. And that's why it's important not to prescribe anyone. So on my list of feeds, there's somebody from India, there is somebody from the United States, a couple of people from the United States, like it or not, you can't avoid that because a lot of that thought comes from there. But there's equally somebody from Australia. And so when you start putting it all together, that's when I start seeing, okay, this person who normally has an opposing point of view to that person is also saying the same thing, so maybe there's something here. So that becomes something that is now trending in me. So now I start looking at that and saying, okay, can I experiment with this? And then if I start seeing echo chambers on my Facebook, I ask myself every day, is this an echo chamber or not? And then it's easy. You can just consciously browse differently and you can see different feeds coming in, right?
So I have to ask, for someone who was in the FMCG industry, you go to the alcohol industry, labeling, at which point did you feel like, this kind of research and this kind of knowledge would be a barrier to entry in the healthcare industry? And how did you overcome that barrier?
What do you mean by this kind of research would be a barrier to health?
In the sense that, like how you said, two things are very important. One is validation, the other one is research, right? Right now, when I talk to you, I would think that you've been in this industry for the last 25 years, not just the last 3 years, right? So, at what point or how did your journey start in this industry in terms of deep diving into it and understanding that, I'm not just consuming noise?
Not just consuming noise is an attitude. And if you go with that attitude and also tell yourself that whenever you start a new industry, your knowledge about that industry is zero. And so you go with a learning mindset. So if you go with a learning mindset and an ability or the humility to know that there are different points of view that I need to inculcate, learning becomes quite fast. Your brain is a very powerful organ. It can receive as much data as you want to feed it, right, of different industries. And ultimately, when you go for a business, your mindset is, other than learning, is I want to use this to solve a problem, right? And that problem is what will create value for the business. So if you go with that mindset, you're constantly looking for what the problem is that you want to solve. So there could be a problem like in FMCG, am I penetrating a category? Which means I'm getting more and more people to use the product, which is true in most cases in India. You have under-penetrated products, right? Sometimes it's a share game. Then you need to know what your competitor is also doing, right? And how can you solve your consumer's problem better than your competitor? So that's a market share game, kind of an issue, right? Or you are coming up with something completely new like Biopeak, where you are evolving an industry into the next generation. So then it's a different problem you're trying to solve. So if you go with that attitude of saying, I'm here to solve a problem, I need to have the humility to know I'm starting from zero. And I will inculcate diverse points of view, then I think you have the combination that is required to migrate industries or jobs or careers, right? If you go with the mindset that I am the most successful person and it's my way or the highway, you're guaranteed to be a casualty, right? So I think that's really what differentiates you, right? That dexterity to move comes if you have the humility to learn.
Yes, sir. I think coming to the conclusion of the podcast, I have one very important question to ask you that's been on my mind. AI has been disrupting every single industry out there. And you mentioned that again, AI could again, like, you can't have a doctor going through 3,000 research papers a day, but artificial intelligence could do that. Do you think there's going to come a point in time where you can probably run like maybe a 1, 5, or a 10 member team and just leverage AI to the point that you can have like $1 billion, like like $1 billion, not just like in the in like the longevity space, but like any like health tech company.
See, I think it's a very large question, right? And I think so. First of all, AI is making great leaps and bounds in terms of progress, right? But AI suffers from hallucinations, from the adverse prompting impact, biases of how it was created. The best one is called illusion of transparency. So it, gives you this illusion that you are accurate, but you're not, but it's not, or toxicity. So I think you need a human in the loop to manage the AI. Sure, there will be implications and the number of humans that you need in the loop, right? And what the humans will do. Today, the human is doing a lot of the base level thinking, which tomorrow may not be required with AI over there, right? For example, AI can take the last 10-year reports of mine and create trends and keep it and then keep throwing it up, which is something that a human being may find very difficult because as people change cities, people change hospitals, people change doctors, it's very difficult for somebody to do all that. So all that can be taken care of by AI, right? But you still need a human in the loop to test, to make that judgment on what AI is telling you is actually true or not. So I don't think humans will go away. Their role will change. Their role will change. It will change from being a doer to being a minder, from doing the base level activity to doing value added activity. And by the way, this is true across human civilization, right? The advent of a lever significantly changed the amount of effort a human had to make. It goes back that far. The advent of the wheel made a significant difference to what is the concept of distance. So that journey will continue. So of course, there's a point of view that people believe that there's singularity, and there's a point at which the machine will be more uh, powerful than a human. Well, in some ways that will happen, but in many ways it will not. So I think you have to our roles, how we define careers, how we define jobs, will change, and that's why what I would like to say, especially because this is a podcast that may go out to young people, investing in yourself to have an edge where you are truly world class is important. Doesn't matter whether you're a doctor, lawyer, engineer, scientist, general manager, you have to have an edge. Other than that edge, learning how to energize people, lead people, engage with people, talk to people, create followership for yourself. And I don't mean in the virtual sense, I mean in the real world. That is a skill that you must invest in. So I think if you have these two, you will in some ways be future proofed. And that's something that I've always tried to inculcate, because wherever I've gone, I know that if I don't have some edge, then I don't have a role. Right? So even if I go for a meeting and there are 6 professionals over there, there's a chartered accountant, there's a company secretary, there is somebody else, there's a marketeer, I'm asking myself, what is my edge in this meeting? What can I do? Am I going to synthesize all these points of view? Am I going to be the courage guy who's going to take a bold decision? Or am I going to be the nurturer in this meeting and allow the team to find a answer on something? So it's different, but I have to ask myself the question, what's my edge today? What's my edge here? What's my long-term edge? And then have to carry people. I said that right at the beginning, right? One man can't do anything. Or one person can't do anything. So, yeah.